All right, hello. We're going to go ahead and get started now. I'm Christina Graham, Product Marketing Manager of PhD Science. I will be here monitoring the questions area during today's webinar, along with Selena On, Associate Marketing Manager for PhD Science. Take just a minute to locate that and chat us a hello so we know that you found it. We'll utilize that for both questions and comments during today's session, as we do hope this to be a participatory session. And we're fortunate to not only have Robbie leading us through the conversation today, but Allison as well, who may tag team on the Q&A portion of the webinar. And now, without further ado, I'm happy to hand things over to Robbie.
Hey everyone, glad to have you guys join us for this webinar. We're going to explore how science knowledge builds with and across grade levels. So this is the final webinar in the series, Strategies to Make Your Science Classroom Thrive. So thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Robbie Hunter. I am on the Implementation Success team here at PhD Science. And I'm really happy to explore this topic with y'all today. So teaching kindergarten and then transitioning to teaching special needs kindergarten all the way up to 5th grade, I found that I was often finding connections between units and science topics across all grade levels. So I was recognizing storylines and seeing how knowledge was building. However, my students weren't really making those connections on their own understanding. Today, we're going to explore how a high quality curriculum like PhD Science supports students with knowledge building so we can create a more cohesive, meaningful science experience for students. So what does it mean to build knowledge? Building knowledge means that students' understanding progresses across modules in a grade level and across grade levels themselves. Horizontal and vertical alignment means that students are using knowledge from prior modules and prior grade levels to deepen their science understanding even further. These elements create a coherent storyline, not only for students, but for teachers as well. In science classrooms, it means that students are engaging with compelling phenomena and are using prior and newly acquired science knowledge and skills to make sense of the world. When students have the opportunity to engage with rich, authentic phenomena, they will naturally have questions about what is happening. Carefully selected phenomena will spark questions and reveal gaps in their knowledge. Student learning is then driven by students' questions and the quest to develop an explanation for the phenomenon. As students develop these explanations, they uncover science ideas from evidence, make and revise mental models as their learning progresses, and build enduring knowledge that they can then use to make sense of other phenomena in the world around them. Let's take a moment to reflect a little bit on what the student experience is like in a knowledge building classroom. I want to invite you to reflect on your own experience as a student in science class. Did your experience look anything like this? If not, what was missing? If you have a sticky note or a piece of scratch paper nearby, feel free to jot down your thoughts or just take a mental note. And we're going to revisit this reflection later in today's webinar. So I'll give you a couple seconds to jot down those ideas. So next, let's discuss why building knowledge is important. Research shows that students need a coherent approach to studying science with clear connections among levels and across concepts. When students are given the opportunity to build knowledge across all grade levels, it brings meaning and relevance to what they're learning. This is not only essential for student engagement in the classroom, but it also leads to a deep understanding of science concepts, rather than rote memorization of disconnected facts that are quickly forgotten. When students build knowledge across those grade levels, they are also better equipped to apply their science knowledge to alternative context. This ability to transfer knowledge to a new context is important when students encounter different phenomena. Not to mention, the transfer of knowledge is a skill that can be helpful when it comes to taking assessment. And lastly, deep understanding of science concepts allows students to make decisions as citizens and prepares them to possibly pursue STEM careers in the future. So what does knowledge building look like in PhD Science? PhD Science was created by a team of writers with teaching backgrounds and subject matter experts who understood the importance of a knowledge-building curriculum. PhD Science was created with these pillars as the foundation. The PhD Science curriculum helps students build knowledge through deep exploration of scientific concepts. Of course, we like to think it's joyfully and rigorous engaging. And the curriculum is coherent as students' knowledge builds and transfers across lessons, modules, and contexts. It also is built by teachers for teachers. So K-5 teachers may not have an extensive science background, and that's okay. The curriculum gives them the tools to be successful and build knowledge as well. Today, we will look at specific examples of knowledge building and coherence within PhD Science. And we're also going to discuss tips and tools for teachers to leverage knowledge building in the classroom. PhD Science was built on the framework and the Next Generation Science Standards, or NGSS. Throughout each PhD Science module, students engage with the 3 dimensions of the framework. They skillfully apply science and engineering practices to construct an understanding of disciplinary core ideas through the lens of cross-cutting concepts. Across modules and grade levels, students revisit science concepts, deepen their understanding of those concepts, and apply them to make sense of phenomena. Today, we're going to explore the role of phenomena in supporting the coherence within and across PhD Science. This curriculum module map shows every PhD Science module students will engage during their K-5 experience. So you notice 3 colors, right? The curriculum module map has the green color that represents life science, orange, which represents earth science, and blue that represents physical science. So let's look at one student's experience, Paula. She's going to build science knowledge within and across the grade levels. So we're going to start with Paula's very first PhD Science module, Level K, Module 1. In Module 1, Paula and her classmates explored the anchor phenomenon, cliff dwellings at Mesa Verde. During this module, Paula's class develops and refines a model that represents a cliff dwelling. They use that model to explore how cliff dwellings protect people from the weather. Through these experiences, Paula establishes an understanding of the parts of weather, the effects of weather has on people and their surroundings, and the ways people prepare for severe weather. Paula will build on this foundational knowledge throughout her elementary school science career. Moving on up to Level 2, Paula is using her knowledge and experiences from Level K and Level 1 to now revisit the role of wind and water. But this time, Paula is studying how wind and water can shape land. Throughout the module, the class explores the anchor phenomenon, the transformation of Surtsey, to build an answer to the essential question, how can the island of Surtsey change shape over time? Paula is able to build on her previous knowledge about weather to develop a new understanding of how weather processes can transform Earth's land over time. So at this point in her journey through PhD Science, Paula is developing the necessary background knowledge to understand Earth systems and how they interact. All right, and we're going to keep going with Paula in Level 4 now. Paula revisits these concepts when her class studies the formation of the Grand Canyon's layers. In this module, students work to answer the essential question, how did the Grand Canyon's features form? At the end of the module, students use their knowledge of rock layers, weathering and erosion, and patterns of Earth's features and processes to explain the anchor phenomenon and apply these concepts in new contexts. Through these experiences, students develop the more complex understanding that Earth's surface features change constantly as a result of natural processes. And finally, in Level 5, Paula applies her knowledge of Earth systems to develop a deeper understanding of all four of Earth's systems and how they are constantly interacting. In this specific module, Paula and her classmates describe and study rice farming in Bali, the anchor phenomenon, to develop and answer the essential question: how has Balinese rice farming endured for 1,000 years? As they progress through each concept, students refine a model representing the movement of freshwater Bali farmers used to farm rice. By the end of the module, students use their knowledge of Earth's interacting systems to explain the anchor phenomenon and extend this knowledge to new contexts. Students develop enduring understandings of the interactions of Earth's systems through study of Balinese rice farming practices. So now that we've seen how knowledge builds across grade levels, let's take a look now at how knowledge builds within a grade level. So let's look at level 5. After developing their particle model of matter in module 1, Paula and her level 5 classmates moved to module 2, an integrated life and physical science module. Paula's class uses the particle model of matter developed in module 1 to study ecosystems and show how matter can flow through living systems now in module 2. Paula then further builds on that knowledge when she analyzes the flow of matter through Earth systems. Her class studies the phenomenon Balinese rice farming to learn that farming is a system that uses the natural interactions of Earth's systems. Finally, in module 4, Paula and her class zooms out to explore the Earth, Sun, Moon system. They build upon their knowledge of particles from module 1 and their knowledge of the atmosphere from module 3 to develop an understanding of the Earth, Sun, and Moon, such as the Earth's gravitational force acts on objects near Earth's surface, including gas and other particles in the atmosphere, and pulls those objects towards the planet's center. By moving through those modules from a student perspective, you can see how PhD Science helps students build knowledge coherently across modules within and across grade levels. But the knowledge building doesn't end with level 5. Students' knowledge of matter deepens in middle school as they learn that matter is composed of atoms and molecules. Additionally, students continue to develop their knowledge of Earth systems and the interaction of those systems. They learn more about water cycles on Earth and how human activity affects the biosphere. And it doesn't even stop there. Students revisit Earth systems again in high school as they study phenomena such as seismic waves. They also explore how human activity can protect and preserve biodiversity and natural resources. So let's zoom in. We've seen how it builds across grade levels and across modules, but let's view an example of how knowledge builds within a PhD Science module. PhD Science is a phenomenon-driven curriculum, so each lesson does build on previous lessons, allowing students to reflect on their learning, generate those new questions, and investigate related topics. From the student perspective, the phenomena in a module are woven together to gradually reveal pieces of the anchor phenomenon. Phenomena are also an important part of PhD Science assessments. So all assessments, including ongoing embedded formative assessments, are centered around explaining phenomena or solving problems that arise from phenomena. This approach helps both teachers and students move away from the decontextualized rote memorization of ideas and toward an inquiry-driven, evidence-based explanation of the world. In PhD Science assessments, students demonstrate their understanding by explaining new phenomenon. Through such an interconnected web of phenomena, students come to understand how they can apply science knowledge to explain novel phenomena. In every module, students engage in hands-on investigations that help them collect evidence and build their knowledge. In order for students to develop explanations of the puzzling process or event, they need to gather evidence. That evidence is often gathered through hands-on investigation. This allows students to experience the science firsthand as they test their own ideas and they build new knowledge. PhD Science also uses reoccurring anchor visuals throughout each module to help develop a coherent narrative and to collect and display evidence of students' new knowledge. This helps them integrate what they have already learned with what they just learned. The class updates the anchor visuals together as new knowledge is built and as new questions arise. Let's pause a second. In your own words, write down a few thoughts about the power of coherence when it comes to knowledge building for students. I'll give you a couple seconds. What are your thoughts about the power of coherence when it comes to knowledge building for students? So we've gotten a lot of information today, but don't worry because PhD Science has it all mapped out for you. But if you're wanting to see it for yourself, here are some resources available for you to utilize. If you'd like to unpack the knowledge built within a module, we recommend starting with Appendix B, the module storyline. In this resource, teachers can see how student knowledge is uncovered during the course of the module. You can see how the anchor visuals are created and updated with new knowledge, and you can preview knowledge building investigations and get a sense of the overall student experience. Teachers can also use the module overview at the beginning of the teacher edition to explore the module map and fill out questioning structure for the module. These resources demonstrate how knowledge is built across lessons and concepts, and how student questions drive that learning toward answering the essential question. The module overview contains a section titled Building Knowledge. So in this section, it gives teachers a glimpse into future and past grade levels. You can use this section to see what knowledge students have coming into your class as it pertains to a certain topic, or what they will learn as they advance through grade levels. Then the curriculum module map reveals how knowledge is built across the modules and the grade levels. So how can we make sure that we are prioritizing student knowledge building in your classroom? We have some implementation tips to share with you that just might help. First, we want to emphasize the importance of teaching modules in the recommended order. Our curriculum writers were very intentional in designing a coherent experience for students. While we know that teaching modules out of order may be tempting a little bit to meet your needs of your district, it's our team's recommendation that modules are taught in order of the curriculum module map. It is important to attend to pacing so that students can experience all 4 modules in each grade level. So we do know that pacing is a challenge. So our team has created flexibility within the program. And we also have created pacing guides to support you as a teacher with making adjustments to lessons. So those pacing guides are available to download for free at greatminds.org. We also have instructional supports built into every single lesson. These supports include spotlights on 3-dimensional integration and cross-curricular connections to extend that knowledge building across science disciplines and other content areas. We strongly encourage teachers to read and use the tips featured in these instructional supports. Science is often taught as a discrete subject. Rarely do we see it taught in ELA and math that reinforces learning across those content areas. So we strongly encourage teachers to find opportunities to integrate science across all disciplines and use science instruction to reinforce ELA and math instruction. Another tip from our team is to establish and maintain professional learning communities, or PLCs, with other grade levels. PLCs are a great place to plan for vertical alignment across those levels and to learn from peers. We also encourage teachers to ask students strategic questions in order to pull from their prior experience. Teacher can ask questions like, where have you seen something like this before? Or what does this remind you of? With those type of open-ended questions, students are able to utilize their prior knowledge and build new knowledge. One implementer, a level 4 teacher, shared with us that she's printed out the family tip sheets for all modules and all grade levels and keeps them in a binder. So this allows her to easily reference learning and phenomenon students would have encountered in those previous grade levels. So these family tip sheets have supported her in having conversations with teachers from other grade levels during PLC, and also with parents when they have questions about what students are learning in class and why they're learning that specific content. Our family tip sheets can also be downloaded for free at greatminds.org. Teachers can and should lean on anchor visuals during instruction. So they're a tool to tie learning back to the anchor phenomenon and support student sense making. We've even seen teachers save or take pictures of anchor visuals from previous modules to refer back to them with their students. Lastly, we recommend being attentive to the content learning cycle. So as students progress through a PhD science module, they wonder, organize, reveal, distill, and finally, know science content through the application of the practices. During each module, students engage with many iterations of the content learning cycle, which is a flexible framework. More information on the content learning cycle can be found in our implementation guide for free at greatminds.org. We hope that those tips were helpful for you. So before we jump into the Q&A portion of today's webinar, I will leave you with this task. I invite you to think back on your K-12 science education that we reflected on at the beginning of today's session. Think about what you learned from the webinar and what you can use starting tomorrow to help your students build science knowledge. How will you change their science educational experience to be more knowledge building? And of course, we are always here to help. Feel free to email our implementation team with any questions you may have. If you'd like to find out more about PhD Science, scan this QR code or visit that link for us. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I enjoy exploring this topic with y'all, and I hope it was helpful. So now we're going to move to the Q&A portion of our webinar.
All right, fantastic. And we do have some questions that rolled in. So I think this probably came up because you shared that we, of course, we suggest following our module sequence, modules 1 through 4 per grade level. But we, of course, also know that districts have their own scope and sequence in some places. So how would you suggest ensuring that coherence of the program remains intact, even if their district does require them to teach in a particular order that may not match up to our scope and sequence?
That is a great question. This, in fact, happened a lot when I taught kindergarten in Florida. The standards didn't align and there was a specific way we had to teach science. So what we would do is, as a kindergarten grade group team, we would meet once a week and we would discuss pacing and ordering of the curriculum, as well as what lessons we were teaching. So we would find places in the lessons that we definitely needed to scaffold for student understanding. We would use pacing guides and prep guides to make sure that we were fitting and getting all the standards met within that school year and teaching the curriculum with fidelity.
Thank you. And then there was brief mention of pacing when you were referencing like our pacing guides and things like that. How can I help students make this deep connections when I'm only able to teach science a couple times a week at best?
I feel like one great takeaway from our curriculum is that the connection piece and the discussion piece for students is built into our lessons and built into TE. So that makes it pretty easy. Also, the conversation prompts can help build those deep connections with students and lessons. We know we don't have a lot of time to teach science, so you definitely want it to be meaningful and have those students walk away with a deeper knowledge of science. So I feel like using the TE with Fidelity, using those lessons, and then also those conversation prompts will definitely help you make those deep connections that students need.
Thank you. And speaking of deep connections and connections in general, can you speak a bit more to the integration of science across disciplines?
Yes, they kind of tie in together, don't they? So there's typically, again, not a lot of time allotted for science instruction during our school day. So RTE does provide notes on how to integrate specific science content into your ELA and your math time. So the benefits is you're getting all areas and you're teaching all areas of that. And they're also getting that science content as well. So this helps with the time management extremely.
Thank you. And then just the final question, unless I see more come in, can you further explain how phenomena supports knowledge building?
Yes, students grasp phenomena at a young age. And so they really take on that phenomena and they have that in their background knowledge. So they learn from prior levels and lessons. They're able to reflect on the phenomena in past learning and then generate new ideas and investigate related topics as the grade levels increase or as they go up in grade levels. So it's not about just simple memorization anymore and then forgetting about it. They remember that phenomena, they remember what they learned, and they're able to build on that and then cross it over to a different style or different type of phenomenon. So it brings science and critical thinking to life in order for those students to fully grasp new ideas that are being taught.
Awesome. Thank you, Robbie. Allison, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but anything to add in terms of scope and sequence, pacing, integration across disciplines, or phenomena?
Yeah, so I really wanted to add a little bit about response that Robbie gave about integration. I'm thinking a lot about the reflection question and my own experience, with just being a student in a science classroom and it feeling very siloed in terms of we talk about science during science, we talk about math during math, we talk about ELA during ELA. And I think as teachers, as facilitators in the classroom, we really have an opportunity to encourage students to themselves take on the task of pulling in ELA skills, pulling in math skills. So while our curriculum does provide support for teachers in what this would look like, I think just as teachers in using the curriculum, using that support, really just providing a space for students to feel comfortable, with pulling in those other subject areas and pulling in those skills themselves.
Thank you for that. Well, unless I see more questions trickle in, I think we are wrapping up. So thank you so very much to Robbie for leading us through this webinar on building science knowledge. And thank you to Allison for tagging in on our Q&A and enlightening us further. And of course, a big thank you to our attendees for joining. We hope you found this to be a meaningful experience. As you leave today's webinar, a brief survey will launch. We do read all the feedback received and take that feedback to allow us to better serve you in future webinars. If you have further questions after today's webinar, we're happy to see that information in the survey, but we're also thrilled to connect with you further, whether it's on social media or even further, you can reach out to us more directly and we can get you connected to sales. With that, thank you again, and we hope to see you soon.